You will hear from my lawyer.
My final gift to my children is a court summons. It wasn't the screaming fights of the grand betrayals that finally broke the dam of my patience. It was something much quieter, much smaller. It's the milky wearing my daughter, Chulo, left on the walnut table Arthur's table when she sat down her sweeting glass of iced tea without a thought. As I stared at that permanent, careless circle etched into the wood my husband had polished with such love every Sunday, I realized it was a practical monument to what I had become in me children's eyes, sturdy, reliable surface to leave their message on, and nothing more. That water ring was the final invoice, and I decided then and there it was time to issue one of my own. The silence that followed Chulo's departure was thick and heavy. The Kenta presses in and on you after a storm has passed. Her car had barely cleared the driveway, its engine a fading winds down the street. Before I saw it, I had been clearing away her half-finished day, the ice cubes melting into a pale brown pool at the bottom of the glass, and there, on the zip, polished grain of Arthur's walnut table, was the ghostly white ring. It was a fair bit of oil and elbow grease coil erase. It was a stark, opaque circle, a brand carelessness burned deep into the finish. She had been here for exactly 47 minutes. I knew because I had been watching the grandfather clock in the hall, its pendulum slicing time into patient, rhythmic seconds. 47 minutes of breezy, unsighted conversation about the perils of finding a reliable contractor for her new kitchen renovation. It was to be a Tuscan-inspired culinary space, she announced, her eyes fixed on her phone as she scrolled through images of marble countertops and copper sinks. She punctuated her monologue with sizes about the cost, the impossible lead times of Italian tire, the sheer stress of it all. It's just an investment in our home, Mom, in our future, she said, looking up for a brief moment, her smile perfectly curated for an audience that wasn't there. You know how important a beautiful sanctuary is for my brain. I had murmured something non-committal, pouring her more tea. She taken the glass from my hand without a glance, her thumb continuing its relentless swipe across the screen, and set it down directly on the wood. I felt a smile, familiar tighten in me chest, a protest that died before it could form into words. Don't make a fuss, Judith, I told myself. The same refrain it used for 30 years. It's just a glass. She's busy. She doesn't mean it, but Arthur had meant it. He had spent a full into stripping and refinishing this table, a piece had rescued from a dusty corner of his father's workshop. I could still see him in my mind's eye, his glasses perched on his nose, carefully rubbing seed oil into the grain, his movements slow and reverent. You have to respect the wood, Judy, he used to say, his voice gentle but firm. It has a history it remembers. I know the table remembered Chloe's disregard. I ran my finger over the opaque ring. It was rough to the touch, the wood smooth lacquer velated, its sails clouded by the seeping coals. I went to the pantry and returned with a soft cloth and a bottle of lemon oil, our favorite. I worked add the oil into the circle, moving with the grain, my motions practiced and hopeful. But when I wiped away the excess, the ring remained, defiant and pale against the rich brown. The damage was done. It was permanent. And in that moment, the years of quiet endurance felt less like maternal grace and more like a fool's concession. This ring was not an isolated incident. It was a symptom of a much deeper sickness. It was the unpaid land for me son Lim's first failed startup. It was the last-minute plane ticket to Bali for Giovanna's retreat after her first divorce. It was the assumption that my home was a free hotel, my car a community shuttle, and my savings account a public utility. It got a thoughtless tucking had left a mark, invisible but just as permanent, on the foundation of my life. They had mistaken my love for a lack of boundaries, my generosity for an infinite resource. I left the cloth on the table and walked my steps measured into Arthur's old study. The room smelled faintly of him, of old books and pipe tobacco. I went to his roll-top desk, a formidable piece of oak and brass, and used a small key from the chain I wore around my neck. It unlocked a thin, deep drawer just above the right pedestal, a drawer my children had never known existed. Inside, there was not just there were ledgers, but for a business, a family, Arthur, an engineer to his very soul, had recorded everything. I pulled out the most recent volume, its blue cover worn at the edges. I opened to a pair bookmarked with a crisp $10 bill. My own handwriting precise and achievable filled the column the I a priori had làm, bringing for payroll 45.000, a Junhain Hilo deposit for Toscan Thai Dam. Năm nguyện, June 28, Liam, emergency server costs, bám về his, ran on, page after page, a meticulously of my own slow liquidation, staring at the cold, hard numbers. I felt the last wisp of melancholy burn away, replaced it by something cold and clear eyes. The watering wasn't an insult, it was clarification. My children believed their father's legacy was the money he had left. His true legacy was in his desk, the evidence, the foresight, the unassailable truth. He had respected the wood, and I would finally respect his memory. The ledger lay open on Arthur's desk, the lamplight pulling on its ruly pages. Each entry, a neat little tombstone for a piece of our shared future. The house was so quiet I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, a sound I hadn't noticed in years. In the stillness, numbers on the page began to dissolve, replaced by a letter written only in my memory, its entries spanning decades. It began not with dollars and cents, but with scraped knees and bedtime stories. We mothers reflect their instinct to say whatever was needed. I remember at Liam, small and serious, wanting a telescope more than anything for his 10th birthday. We couldn't really afford the one hedge circled in the catalog. The on with the powerful lens for seeing Saturn's ring. Arthur and I cast zeros for a month, but on his birthday morning, the telescope was there. The look on Liam's face as he saw it, Kate, unadulterated joy, was a dividend repaid the cost 1,000 times over. That was a gift. It asked for nothing in return. Then came the bigger things. University. We paid for both of them, every penny. We believe it was the most important investment we could make. I can still see Chloe packing for her art history degree, her suitcases overflowing with new clothes. Don't worry, Mom, shut your bed, hugging me tightly. You'll make you and Dad so prouder one day. You'll be able to pay you back for everything. Her words were sweet, and as promises that evaporate like morning mist. Lem was more pragmatic. It's the launching pad, he said, shaking his father's hand. Thank you. I won't let you down. They never thought of it as a debt, and for a long time neither did we. It was simply what parents did. The down payment on Chloe's first condo, like a natural extension of that. She'd found the perfect place. She'd cried over the phone, but the bank was being difficult. It's just to get me started, she pleaded, her voice thick with manufactured desperation. Once my design business takes off, I to be a drop in the ocean. We pulled the money from our retirement savings, a significant sum, enough to make Arthur's brow furrow with concern. He noted it in the ledger, under a new heading, loans to children. Liam's first request came 2 years later. It wasn't for a home, but for a dream. He and a friend had an idea for a tech startup that would, he claimed, revolutionize data management. He spoke in a language of capital and burn rates that we didn't understand, but his passion was infectious. This is it, Dad had said, his eyes gleaming. This is the big one. I just need to seed money to get the prototype built. Arthur was skeptical, but I persuaded him. How could we fund one child's future and not the others? The check we wrote was entered into the ledger on the line read below Chloe's. I turned a page in the heavy book now, me finger tracing the familiar slant of Arthur's handwriting. He was always the more cautious one. I remember an evening, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, sitting right here in this study. He had the ledger open just as he did now. He wasn't angry, just wary. Judy had said, tapping a long column of figures next to Liam's name. The balance is off, our generosity is becoming the expectation. It started to defend them. I relaxed on over years. They were just finding their feet. The world was a harder place now. He held up a hand to stop me, his gaze gentle but unyielding. Love is not a blank check, I spoken to Robert outright. We've set something else up, separate from all this. He pointed to the ledger. This the account of our heart, but we need another on an account of our 42, a firewall, just in case for you. I hadn't fully understood then. It sounded clinical, almost mistrustful. I brushed it off as a possessive need for contingency plans. An account of fortitude. The phrase has seemed so dramatic. Now, sitting alone in the silence, the words echoed with chilling presence. The entries in my own handwriting began a year after he was gone. My script was shakier. The numbers smaller at first, then larger and more frequent. A car repair for Chloe, a rent shortfall for Lum. Then the requests grew bolder, the emergencies more dire. The excuses became thinner, the entitlement thicker. They stopped calling them loans. They became help or a bailout or, in Chloe's case, an advance on my inheritance. Really, if you think about it, the ledger in me memory and ledger on the desk had finally merged into one single, damning document. The early pages were filled with love. The later pages were a testament to exploitation. Closes the book, the heavy cover fell with a soft, final note that seemed to echo in the vast emptiness of the house. The accounting was finished. The debt owed was no longer just financial, it was a direct aspect of simple human decency. And it was long past Zui. Lem arrived on Thursday, not with a phone call beforehand, but with a sudden, jarring buzz of the doorbell. He brought the frantic energy of the city into my quiet hallway, his leather briefcase bumping against the doorframe, his tea already loosened at his throat. He smelled expensive cologne and desperation. Mom, you would not believe the opportunity that just fell into my lap. He began, bypassing a hall and straighting directly into the living room. He passed it in front of the fireplace, a gadget tear mapping out his territory. T.S. it, the pivot we've been waiting for. It's Scarlet Sunset Venture. I remained by the door, my hand still on the gold brass knob. I watched him, and for the first time, felt a sense of clinical detachment, as if I was serving a specimen under glass. The flushed face, the rapid-fire speech, the way his eyes darted around the room without ever truly seeing it, it was a performance I had seen many times before. It's a murder, sort of. More of an acquisition, he continued, pulling a sleek tablet from his briefcase. He swept to charts and graphs that were all sharp angles and upward trajectories. This other company, they have the hardware we need, but their software is archaic. We have the card can unlock their full potential. It's a perfect synergy, but the window is closing. Mom, fast. The other investors are lined up, but I need to show I have the full backing of my primary shareholder. You. He finally stopped pacing and turned to me, his expression shifting from frantic venery to earnest son. It was a practiced, seamless transition. I need $75,000. It's a bridge task out to secure our position before the big boys finalize the deal on terrain. By the end of the quarter, you see a return of 3 times that, minimum $75,000, the number hung in the air between us, obscene in its casual delivery. I thought of the ledger in Arthur's desk. I could picture the exact page where this new entry would go, the latest in a long, sorrowful column that now corresponding column for repayments. He said nothing, and my silence seemed to unnerve him. It was a deviation from the script. I was supposed to look worried, ask a few gentle questions, and then eventually sigh and ask where to sign. He took a step closer, his voice dropping to a more intimate, conspiratorial tone. A mom, Dad would have understood this. He was an engineer. He knew that sometimes you have to build the bridge before you know for sure if the other side is solid. You have to take a calculated risk. The invocation of his father was a low blow, and we both knew it. It was his trump card, the one he played when he sensed resistance. Using the memory of a careful, meticulous man to justify a reckless gamble was sacrilege. The image of the run-on they wanted to double flash in my mind. Another small act of desecration. He also kept ledgers. Liam, he said. My voice was quiet but good to his momentum. He blinked, thrown for a moment. What? Yeah, sure. He was organized. That's my point. This is an organized, strategic move. He rallied quickly, shifted his next tactic. He ran a hand through his already messy hair and sank onto the arm of the sofa, his shoulders slumping. The weight of his imagined role was suddenly upon him. I thought you believed in me, he said, his voice now laced with a tragical wound. After all this work, all the sacrifices I made, it is what it comes down to. You don't trust my judgment. There it was, the emotional pincer movement. First, invoked the sainted dead. Second, questioned the loyalty of the living for ye. It had worked perfectly, boxing me in with good and desperate, maternal urge to fix his unhappiness. But this time I wasn't looking at me little boy. I was looking at a 38-year-old man who had mistaken May savings account for his own. I saw the expensive paper watch on his wrist, the Italian leather shoes had kicked up by the czar. I saw the water ring. I saw the ledger. I remembered Arthur's words about a firewall. I walked past him and sat in my armchair, the one opposite the couch. I folded my hands in my lap, creating a small, formal distance between us. It's a significant amount of money, Liam, he said, my tone level and calm. It was the voice CEO at the chair dealing with researchers who demanded access to fragile documents, polite, firm, and non-negotiable. His head snapped, narrowing. This was new. All of this was new. It's an investment, Mom, not an expense, he snapped, the veneer of the wounded son cracking to reveal the frustration beneath. Perhaps, I said, but a request of this size requires due diligence. The phrase came to me from nowhere and everywhere, a piece of Arthur's vocabulary that had been laying dormant in my memory. I will need to consult my financial records, and you need to speak with Robert Albright. The mention of family's financial planner was like throwing a bucket of ice water on him. His jaw went slack. Albright, why, this is a family matter. It's between us. $75,000 is a business matter, I replied. My gaze steady. I need to review everything before I can make a decision. I will call you when I have an answer. It was a dismissal, not a no, not Ed, but it was the farthest thing from a yes. It was a closed door where I had always found an open one. He stood up, his face a mask of disbelief and barely concealed fury. He snatching his briefcase from the floor, his movements jerky and aggressive. He didn't bother with a goodbye. The front door slammed behind him, and the vibration ran through the floorboards of the old house. I sat there in the ringing silence, my heart beating a steady, resolute rhythm. The first seed was planted. I had, for the first time, bought myself time. Phone call to Robert Albright's office felt like a clandestine act emanated from Arthur's study. The door firmly closed. My voice low as flame or slow might materialize in the hallway. The receptionist was warm and efficient, scheduling me for the following afternoon. "He'll be very pleased to see you," Mr. Miller said. I wondered if he would. Once he saw what I was bringing, the next day he packed a banker's box. It felt appropriate and equal. Inside was the blue ledger, its pages a dainty tapestry of capitulation. I added folders of bank statements. It retrieved from the basement archives, each one mechanically tabbed by year. The final item was a small, worn leather-bound notebook. This was Arthur's private log, the one he kept in the months before he passed. I had never read it. Ancient tea, the reef had always been too sharp, but I knew it contained his final financial thoughts. The box was heavy, not just with paper, but with a weight of unspoken truths. Mr. Albright's office was a quiet sanctuary of dark wood, leather-bound books, and the gentle ticking of a mantel clock. It smelled the way I imagined stability would smell. He was a man made of soft angles and keen eyes. His silver hair neatly combed. He had been Arthur's advisor for 2 years, and when he shook my hand, his grip was firm and reassuring. It felt, for a moment, like shaking a ghost of my husband's prudence. "Judith," he said, gesturing the comfortable chair opposite his large, uncluttered desk. "It's been too long. I'm so glad you called. Arthur would be well. He would be pleased you're taking an active hand." His words meant to be comforting, carry a sting of unintentional irony. He placed the banker's box on the floor beside my chair. "I'm afraid this isn't a social call, Robert," he began, my voice steadier than I expected. "And I'm afraid I haven't been taking an active enough hand for quite some time." I didn't let emotion cloud the narrative. As I had once organized historical records, I now organized the story of my family's finances. I laid out the ledgers, the statements, the story of down payments and seed money, of emergencies, both real and imagined. It spoke out of Liam's sunset venture and Tuscan kitchen. It spoke without accusation or self-pity, presenting information as a series of documented events. He listened without interruption, his expression calm and serious, his gaze fixed on me now and then. He would make a quick note on a legal pad. When I finished, the silence in the room was profound. He looked from me to the document spread across his desk. "Thank you for your candor, Judith," he said softly. He gestured to the boss. For the next hour he worked. He took the ledgers and the statements and began to build a spreadsheet on his computer. The monitor angled away from me. The only sounds were the soft click of his keyboard and the rustle of paper. I sat and watched the ghost of this man's square competence. I remembered Arthur's words from years ago about a firewall and a counter for fortitude. I had come here to ask about that, but first, I needed to see the scale of the fire. Finally, he stopped typing. He took a deep breath and turned the larger monitor to face me. The screen was filled with columns and rows, but my eyes were drawn to a single cell at the bottom, highlighted in yellow. It contained one number, the total, the sum of every loan gift, bailout, and rescue since Arthur had passed. Seeing it consolidated into a single figure was a physical blow. It was a number that represented a second mortgage, a fleet of new cars, a comfortable retirement for someone else entirely. It was the material cost of my silence. My breath caught in my throat. "I see," I whispered, my hand flying to my mouth. Robert swiveled his chair back. "Judith," he began, his tone gentle but grave. "What you've been describing and what these numbers show, we have a name for this. It's called elder financial exploitation." The phrase was absolutely clinical and perfect. It stripped away all the familiar justifications, all the excuses about helping one's children. It was a diagnosis. Before Arthur passed, he continued, seeing the shock on my face. He was worried. He saw the pattern beginning. He told me, "My heart will always be his safety net, Robert. But I can let you this future be their piggy bank. That firewall he mentioned to you is very real." He opened a drawer and pulled out a thick bound portfolio. "The majority of your liquid assets, your primary investments from Arthur Estate, were placed into an irrevocable just 5 years ago. You are the sole beneficiary. The trustee is a corporate third party. You can draw from it. You can live on it. but no one can compel you to sign it away or access it without your express, legally verified consent. This, he said, tapping the spreadsheet on the screen, the money you have given them has gone from your personal accounts and the home equity line, the core of your financial security, the account of fortitude, as I call it, is untouchable itself. He protected you. A tears I hadn't realized and was holding back began to stream down my face. They weren't the tears of sadness, but of overwhelming gratitude for the man I had lost. Arthur had seen, he had known, and from beyond the grave, he had given me this final, critical gift of protection. Robert let me have my moment, then pushed a box of tissues quietly across the desk. Judith, he said, his voice firming up, my expertise is in wealth management and preservation. What you are facing now has moved beyond that. It has become a legal matter. You need to speak with an attorney who specializes in estate law and asset protection. This isn't about punishment, it's about establishing firm, legally binding boundaries to protect what is rightfully yours. He wiped my eyes and squared me shoulders, a new resolve hardening within me. The shock was receding, replaced by a cold, clear purpose. I had the facts, I had the diagnosis, and now I had the ghost of my husband's foresight lighting the path ahead. He owed. It took 2 days, 48 hours of Charles' silence before they launched the next volley. I had spent the time in a state of great preparation, reading to the portfolio Abra Wright had given me, the one detailing Arthur's protected trust. I was absorbing the language of my own defense, arming myself with knowledge, when the phone rang on Saturday afternoon, displaying Chloe's smiling, professionally photographed face. He knew the ceasefire war over. Mama, I was just thinking about you, she began, her voice a cascade of warm, liquid honey. It was the voice she used for her blood-sponsored posts, a carefully modulated performance of sincerity. How are you feeling? Lee mentioned her pot by the other day. He said you seemed a bit distracted. He sat down at the kitchen table. The cold wood comfort against my forearms. I had a clear view of the garden, the roses blooming in blissful ignorance. I'm feeling perfectly clear, Chloe. Thank you for asking. Oh, what is it worry, you know? A perfectly timed point filled with theatrical concern. It's a big house, and since that well, you have so much on your plate. All the bills, the upkeep, the finances. It must be completely overwhelming. I could almost see the script they had rehearsed. Lamb, the battering ram had failed. Now Captain Lloyd, the silken girdle, to finish the job. My abrasive word echoed in my main exploitation. I was no longer just having a conversation with my mediator. I was subject being analyzed, manipulated, and softened for the final push. I managed to say, my voice even. It would give her nothing to work with, knowing a weakness. Ain't no use or mum. You're the strongest person in all, she quit, laying the flattery on thick. But you shouldn't have to. We were talking, Liam and I, and waiting it's time you let us help, really help, I mean, take some of the burden off your shoulders. The word we was the key. It confirmed the coordination. This wasn't a spontaneous, loving thought from a concerned daughter. This was strategy session that had taken place after Liam's defeat. They had regrouped, identified my resistance as a problem to be solved, and deployed their next weapon. And what kind of help do you have in mind? I asked it, my fingers tracing the grain of the tabletop. Well, she said, her tone even more gentle, as if explaining something to us so much you. Liam is just so brilliant with all that business stuff. You could know numbers and planning. He said he'd be more than happy to just handle things for you. He could make sure all the bills had to pay on time, manage the accounts, deal with all that stressful paperwork, so you can just relax and focus on your garden and your book club. The chap was being said, each piece laid with sweet patronizing care. They were attempting to infantilize me, to frame my own life as a series of chores too complex for my aging mind. They were not offering to help me, they were offering to replace me. It would be so simple, she went on, her voice barely above a whisper. All it would take is for you to give him power of attorney. There it was, the two words that would send away my independence. Power of attorney. It sounded so benign, so official, a simple legal tool, but in the hands it could be a weapon. It would give Liam access to everything, not just the personal accounts. It'd been draining for their benefit, but with a little digging, he would inevitably find the trust Arthur had so carefully built. The firewall would be breached, and everything would be lost. A profound, icy calm settled over me. The last vestiges of a mother's hope, the faint, foolish wish that I was wrong about him. That in that moment, this wasn't about her $75,000 anymore. It was never just about the money. The money was simply the means to an end. This was about control. It was a bloodless scope wedged with sweet words and feigned concern. Has already had the papers drawn up by his lawyer, Chloe added, her voice bright with the assumption of my consent. Just I'll make it easy for you. He could bring them by tomorrow. It's just a signature, Mom. A signature that says you trust us to take care of you. The manipulation wrapped breathtaking its audacity. They had turned trust, the very bedrock of a family, into a tool of coercion, Cynthis. Or you prove you don't trust your own children. My mind, the mind they were so eager to label as confused and overwhelming, had never been sharper. It saw the entire strategy like they create a problem misposed confusion, offer a solution to help, and provide the weapon for their own victory. They brought the documents, Chloe said, and my voice was so quiet she had to train to hear. That is a very significant suggestion. I let the words hang in the air. You will need to give it a great deal of thought. This isn't the kind of decision one makes during a Saturday afternoon phone call. A flicker of impatience, the first crack in her serene facade. Well, of course, but there's not much to think about, is there? It's just as helping you. Nevertheless, he said, my tone final. I will think about it. I have to go now, my tears getting cold. You speak to you soon. I hung up before she could reply. As he not slammed the phone down, he placed it gently back in its square, sat in the silence of my kitchen, the view of the garden suddenly seeming very far away. The battle lines were no longer blurry. They were etched in stone. My children were not just careless, they were methodical. On Monday morning, I didn't call Chulo back. I called the number Robert outright had given me. It belonged to a law firm downtown, one with a name that sounded more like a fortress than a legal practice. I asked for Isabella Diaz. Her office, nothing like Robert's. It was modern, minimalist, with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the bustling city. The only adornments were framed academic degrees and a single, vibrant orchid on her desk. Miss Diaz herself was as steady in controlled energy. She was younger than I expected, perhaps in her late 30s, with dark hair put back in as suburban and sharp, intelligent eyes behind thin, steel-framed glasses. She wore a perfectly tailored grey suit. The kind of armor that announced in her was owner what to be trifled with. She didn't offer platitudes or small talk. After a firm handshake, she gestured to the chair opposite her own and said, Mills outright gave me a brief overview, but I need to hear it from you, from the beginning. And so, for the second time in less than a week, he recounted the story. But this time was different. I wasn't just presenting facts to a financial analyst, I was laying out a case. I told her about the water ring, the leisure, Lim's urgent venture, and the coordinated call about power of attorney. Spoke with the dispassionate clarity of a tired archivist presenting the event as a dated and cataloged artifact of my family history. When I finished it, she leaned back in her chair, her fingers stippled under her chin. She didn't look at me with pity, which I was grateful for. She looked at me with focused, professional intensity. She said, her voice crisp and direct, fresh. I want to validate what you are feeling. The sense of betrayal, the confusion, the great anger. These are not overreactions. You are describing a classic pattern of undue infinity and causers. You are not overwhelmed. You are being targeted. Her words landed like stone in a quiet pond. Targeted. It was a word from cramped dramas and newspaper headlines, not from the quiet landscape of my life, yet it fit perfectly. In that moment, Isabella Diaz gave me more valuable than legal advice. She gave me the correct vocabulary for my own experience. I was not a difficult mother, a paranoid widow. I was a target, and that man could start building a defense. Your husband was a very wise man, she continued, gesturing to the file May already had forwarded. This irrevocable trust is an excellent foundation. Our first priority is to reinforce that fortress. Our second is to deal with the ongoing incursions. She turned to her computer and pulled up a mind map, a way of boxes and connecting lines. This is a multi-pronged approach, she explained, her tone shifting from empathetic listener to strategic commander. It's about proactive defense, not just reaction. Step on, we immediately draft the durable power of attorney and healthcare directive. But instead of your son, we will appoint a neutral third party, a professional fiduciary. This completely neutralizes their primary line of attack. If they present you with their own documents, you can honestly say you already have one in place. It was simple, brilliant, and something I never would have thought of. It was a move from my side of the board, a piece she was placing to checkmate her advance. Step 2, she went on, her finger tracing a line on the screen. We need to formalize the debts, the money you've given them from your personal accounts, the sums in your ledger. Right now, in the eyes of the law, they are likely considered debts. We are going to change that. We will draft promissory notes for if the major withdraws. They will be dated with a nominal but legally significant interest rate and a clear repayment schedule. I must have looked at Stin because of the shaved lovelet. I asked is the idea seeming preposterous? Oh, they would see in them. She said with a thin, knowing smile, not voluntarily. The notes would be delivered with a letter from me explaining that for estate planning purposes, all outstanding loans must be formalized. The refusal to sin becomes, in itself, an admission. It documents the intent. That I never viewed it as a loan to be repaid is a crucial piece of evidence. The word hung in the air. I was no longer just a mother dealing with her children. I was a plaintiff building a case. Finally, step 3 is the will. May Diaz concluded, her eyes meeting mine. We will admit. We add a specific class stating that any and all outstanding debts owed to you at the time of your passing will be deducted with interest from that chill portion of the inheritance. It transforms your will from a simple bequest into an instrument of accountability. It ensures that final accounting is fair. I sat back, me mind reeling. In less than an hour, this sharp, focused had this moment made children's strategy and erected a series of legal fortifications in its place. She had taken me vague feelings of being wrong and translated them into a precise, actionable plan. There was no rage in her strategy, no petty desire for revenge. It was outcard and impeccably logical. It was about order, accountability, and the restoration of boundaries. It was, I realized it, the most profound form of protection I could have asked for. Missy Miller, she asked, her voice softening slightly. Are you all right? I looked at her at the steel frames of her glasses that seemed to reflect the clear, sharp light of her intellect. Yes, Miss Diaz, he sang, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt the ground from up beneath my feet. I am. Let's begin. The days that followed me, meaning with Miss, they were quite full of purposeful activity. There were no dramatic confrontations, no tearful phone calls. Instead, there was paperwork, stacks of it. Each signature felt like a stone in a fortress wall. I moved it with the precision of an archivist creating a new, protected collection. The collection this time was the remainder of my life. Miss Z had explained that after just while a masterstroke of foresight protected only the assets it held. The house, me personal savings, and a few other investments were still in my name, making them vulnerable. They were the island territories, the fields beyond the castle walls that could be pillages. Our first task was to bring everything of value inside the fortifications. We were not creating a new trust, but rather consolidating everything into the existing one. This was a critical distinction. The trust Arthur had established years ago was irrevocable, a word that now sounded like a sacred vow. It meant that its term could not be easily changed, not even by me. It was a structure designed to withstand pressure from without and within. By placing my remaining assets into this pre-existing asset trust, we were giving them the highest level of protection the law could offer. The biggest step was the house. This house, where I had raised my children, where Arthur and I had built a life brick by brick, was more than just an asset, was the heart of my world. Signing the deed over to the trust felt monumental, like changing its very soul. Sat at a polished table in an attitude company office, a notary public watching me with benign indifference. The pen felt heavy in my hand. I was just signing a document. I was severing a direct line of ownership that my children had always seen as their future inheritance. From this moment on, I would live in the house as a beneficiary, not as the outright owner. The true owner was now a legal entity, an impartial guardian managed by people who did not know my children's birthdays or the sound of their voices when they played it for money. It was a strange feeling, this deliberate surrender of control in order to regain it. I was giving up the right to sell my home on a whim, to mortgage it to fund a startup, to send it away a moment of weakness or caution. I was protecting my future self from my own hurt. We did the same with my personal savings and investment accounts, the ones he had been using as a private bank for Lemon Chulo. Account by account, as yes, and her paralegals drafted the transfer documents. The numbers shifted from one column on a screen to another, disappearing from my personal balance sheet and representing the hedrabo heading of the Judy Milan La Irrevocable Trust, me accessible, vulnerable cash reserves dwindling to a modest operating for daily life, where the vast majority of my liquid would move it behind the firewall. Throughout this process, I played a part. When Chlo called to ask if I had thought any more about the helpful offer, I was vague and placid. Oh, these things are so complicated. There, Isai, I hint of manufactured confusion in my voice. I'm still getting my papers in order. It takes an old woman like me a bit of time. I used their own caricature of me as a shield, me supposed fragility becoming a form of camouflage. Let them think I was dithering. Let them think I was disorganized. The truth was that with every passing day, my position grew stronger, my defenses more formidable. Liam sent a text message, blunt and impatient mom, and he update on Sunset Venture. The clock is ticking. He replied with a simple, still reviewing things, Liam. Will be in touch. Each message was a parry, a deflection that revealed nothing while my true work continued in secret. The final piece of paperwork was for the fiduciary maze. Zias had recommended to act as my power of attorney. He was a rigorous judge, a man with impeccable reputation and a handshake like granite. We met for an hour, and he asked me sharp, insightful questions about my wishes. When he signed the documents appointing him, a profound sense of relief washed over me. I had now, officially, filled the position my children were attempting to seize. The throne was no longer vacant. Walking off a law office, after that final signing, the city air felt different. The silent, powerful maneuvers were complete. The fortress was built. My children, in their arrogance, saw me lie as a territory to be claimed. They had no idea I had already ceded the land to a sovereign power they could not hope to challenge. They were drawing up battle plans for a field that was no longer in play. With the assets secured, there was one final bastion to fortify the future. Mazie summoned me back to her office for what she called the 10th final phase of our defensive strategy. On her desk lay a document I knew well, my last will and testament. It was the one Arthur and I had drafted together years ago, a simple, straightforward directive that divided everything equally between Liam and Joy. It was a document born of love, fairness, and a hopeful vision of their futures. Looking at it now felt like reading a letter from a more naive version of myself. The existing will is legally sound. Miss Des began, her tone pragmatic as always, but is no longer strategically sound. It ran to reflect the current reality of the estate, not the imbalance in distributions that has occurred over the last several years. In nodded, my gaze fixed on a familiar, embossed heading. Imbalance in distributions was a stereo, elegant counter for what felt like a slow, steady hemorrhage. What we are about to do, she said, her eye meeting mine of them of her steel glasses, is not about punishment. It is about equity. A will should ensure a fair distribution of the assets that remain at the time of your death. It should not ignore the assets that have already been distributed in advance. She slid a single sheet of paper across the desk. It was an addendum, a codicil, written dense but unambiguous legal language. She gave me a moment to read it, but my eyes snagged on one particular paragraph. She had highlighted it in yellow. It was dense, but its meaning was utterly transparent. It may express direct had any and all outstanding debts, including but not limited to documentary personal loans, promissory notes, or other financial advancements made to any beneficiary named herein, shall be considered advance on that beneficiary's share of my estate. The total sum of outstanding debt, including any accrued interest as documented, shall be calculated by my executor and deducted from the specific budget for said beneficiary night prior to the final distribution of assets. I read it twice. My training as an archivist had given me an appreciation for the power of precise language, for the way words could create an unalterable record. This paragraph was a masterpiece of consequence. It was a log, a key, and una syllable accounting all in one. It did not designate anyone. It did not speak of anger or betrayal. It simply balanced the books. The ledger Arthur had started, the one I had dutifully maintained, was no longer just a private record of my pain and disappointment. With this clause, it would become an affidavit. It was the official account record of my estate. Every bridge fund, every tile deposit, every emergency that had been funded from my accounts would be tallied. My children had been taking withdrawals against their inheritance for years. Without any thought of the principle, this clause simply reconciled their account. Without our Arthur's little leather notebook, the one it put in the banker's box. After my meeting with Robert, I had finally sat down and read it cover to cover. In his spidery, precise script, he had written, if they see their mother's love not as a gift to be cherished, but as a resource to be drawn upon, a final accounting might be the only way to teach them the difference. He had seen this day coming. This clause was the final issue of his foresight, the completion of the protective circle he had started to draw around me out 2 years ago. It transformed the document, he said, looking up at me. Yes, it's no longer just a gift, it's a final reckoning. It's an instrument of accountability, she corrected gently. It ensures that your legacy is distributed as you intended, equally, not equally from the day you see, but equally over the entire course of their adult lives. The ledger, she added, tapping the file on her desk, becomes exhibit A. We spent another hour going over the new, comprehensive draft of the will. It now made the fiduciary as the executor, an crucial layer of impartiality. It referenced the trust as the primary vehicle of the estate. It was a clean, modern, and legally acted document. When we were done, two of her firm paralegals were brought in to act as witnesses. Its signet name at the bottom of the page, Miss Signature firm clear. The moment Wav avoided the emotion he had expected. There was no sadness nor vengefully. There was only a profound and quiet sense of order being restored. For years, my financial life had been a chill landscape of emotional appeals and blurred lines. This document, this final and ultimate statement of my wishes, was a declaration of borders. It drew a line not anger, but of simple, inarguable fact. This is what was given. This is what remains. This is what is fair. I was rewriting my final words, not in a fit of pique, but with the cold deliberation of a historian setting the record straight. The legacy it would leave my children would no longer be just the sum of my assets, but also this final, indelible lesson in cause and effect. The invitation came a week before my 73rd birthday. It was Chula, of course, her voice brimming with manufactured excitement. Mom, we're taking you out. Just the three of us. Your favorite little Italian place by the waterfront. No presents, just your presence. We want to celebrate you. The performance was flawless, but it knew better. This wasn't a celebration, it was a venue. After weeks of my polite deflections, they had decided on a new tactic, a public ambush, softened by the warm glow of candlelight and a bottle of expensive Chianti. They were going to corner me on neutral ground, assuming I wouldn't make a scene. My acceptance was equally calculated. I needed to see their play, to witness firsthand the lengths they would go to. The restaurant was lovely, all dark wood and white tablecloths. They were the perfect picture of devoted children. Liam holding my chair for me, Chulo fussing over the wine selection. They steered the conversation through my field of safe topics, the wafer, Chulo's latest design project, a book I was reading. They were charming, native, and utterly false. Felt like a visiting dignitary at a state dinner, where every word we ate and every smile is a negotiation. We ate our main courses, lamb had the osobuco, Chulo a delicate branzino. I ordered the risotto, something simple I could push around my plate. As the waiter cleared our dishes, I felt the atmosphere shift. The casual chatter subsided. Lamb cleared his throat, and Chilo reached across the table to place her hand over mine. Her skin was cold. Mom, Lamb began, his voice taking on the serious, man of the house tone he always used when discussing money. We are so happy to be here celebrating with you. And it's because we love you so much that we need to finalize a few things. He reached into the leather briefcase. I hadn't noticed Hedy dead beside his chair. He pulled out a sheaf of papers, neatly bound in a blue Lego cover, and placed it on the white tablecloth between the bread basket and my water glass. The casualness of the gesture was obscene. "'Tis just the paperwork we talked about," Chila said softly, her thumb stroking the back of my hand. "The power of attorney. To let Lamb help you, give you peace of mind. It's our birthday gift to you, really. The gift of not having to worry anymore." The audacity of it, packaging my capitulation as a fact, was breathtaking. They had brought me to this beautiful place, plied me with food and wine, also made me on surrender on a silver platter. I looked at that document. It lay on the table like a coiled snake. Then I looked at me children. I looked at Liam, his face a mask of earnest concern, the same expression he wore when he asked for seed money. I looked at Chloe, her eyes wide and bleeding, the same look she perfected when she needed a deposit for a condo. For the first time, I saw them with absolute, unclouded clarity. They weren't just me, son and daughter. They were a committee of two, and I was the motion on the floor to be voted on. I gently put my hand from under Chloe's. I folded my own hands in my lap. I took a slow, deep breath, letting the ambient noise of a restaurant, the clinking of glasses, the loud hum of conversation wash over me. My heart was not racing. My hands were not shaking. The weeks of preparation with maize, they a silent building of me fortress, have forged something new in me, a core of calm, called steel. I looked at them, then I looked at Chlo. I held their gazes, one after the other, letting the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable, until they began to fidget. Then I spoke a single word. No, it was not a shout. It was not a whisper. It was a simple statement of fact, delivered in a calm, conversational tone. But in the carefully constructed theater of their ambush, it was a bomb. Kila's smile froze, then shattered. She snatched her hand back as my skin had burned her. "Mom, what so you mean?" "No." Eli mask of concerned lips, revealing the raw impatience beneath. "Mom, don't be difficult. This is for your own good. We've been over this. And now I repeated, my voice just at level, just as calm. As he not raise it, he did not need to. The answer is no. I will not be sending those papers. Not tonight. Not ever. The shock on their face was total. It was the dumbfounded expression of a pair of chess players who had just watched head upon sweep taking from the board anticipated arguments, theses, emotional appeal capitulation. They had prepared for every contingency a simple, unadorned refer, but way, Charlotte stammered, her eyes darting between me and Lamb, don't you trust us? This isn't about trust, it said, me gaze unwavering. This is about my decision, and my decision is now. I believe you mentioned it, dessert, eating it like the tiramisu. My complete refusal to engage, to argue, to even explain was a move they could not counter. I had denied them the drama they fed on. It had refused to play me a central role as the emotional, confused old woman. It was simply a person setting her will. The power dynamic in that small, careless space had shifted, suddenly and irrevocably. They had walked in as the predators and as the prey, but they had misjudged the terrain, and they had, most certainly, misjudged me. The rest of the birthday dinner was a masterclass in active tension. Lem paid the bill with a sharp, angry snap of his credit card onto the leather tray. The drive home was silent, the air in the car thick with the shared, simmering fury. I said a polite goodnight on the doorstep and closed the jar. The click of the lock feeling like the final seal on our long-rosed chapter. The storm broke exactly 1 hour later. It began not with thunderclap, but with the incessant buzzing of my phone on the hall table. I let it vibrate itself into silence. Then, a moment later, the small red light on my answering machine began doubling, and another. I made myself a cup of chamomile tea, the familiar ritual of small anchor in the rising tide. Then I sat in Arthur's armchair, the receiver of the landline in my hand, and pressed the play button. I had asked Mess just as she recorded these anticipated exchanges. Documentation, she had advised, is the foundation of your defense. Let them speak. Let them put their own motivations on the record. Lim's voice was first, a raw, ragged bellow, stripped of all its polished boardroom charm. Are you serious? Are you actually serious? After everything done, everything in train built for this family, you humiliate me in a restaurant. What has gotten into you? People are telling you things, aren't they? Filling your head with paranoid nonsense. You need to call me back. Now, we are going to fix this. The message was a classic blend of aggression and gaslighting. He framed his own ambitions as a noble family cause, cast my refusal as a public humiliation of him, and blamed me newfound clarity on the whispers on amid malevolent outsiders. It was a textbook attempt to destabilize and regain control. I took a sip of tea. The next message was Chiloy. Her voice, unlike Limsey, was choked. It practiced tis a prickle sob. The game that had always, without fail, melted my heart. Mom just can't believe you would, so that to us, on your birthday, we were trying to help you. We love you, and you look at us like we were strangers, like we were the enemy. Don't you see how much this hurts? You're being so selfish. The word was her silver bullet. For years, the fear of being a selfish mother had been the driving force behind my every concession. It was the lever she used to pre-open my wallet and me will. But hearing it now, after all I had seen and learned it, the word had lost its power. It was no longer an accusation, it was an observation. I was, at that being selfish, I was putting my own needs, my own security, my own peace first. Her tearful performance was not a cry of a wounded daughter, but the frustrated tantrum of a thwarted opportunist. The text began to arrive in a parallel assault, long scrolling screeds from Lamb, filled with capital accusations of betrayal. Sentences like, you are destroying his family, and that won't be ashamed of you. Chilos were strings of broken phrases and emojis, how could you? Followed by him, just so worried you're not taking Kelly, and please just call me back. We can talk this through. He did not feel the sting of pain I'd expected. The year's emotional calluses I had mistaken for resilience had been stripped away, but what lay beneath wasn't raw pain. It was a cold, immutable clarity. He listened to their voicemails and read the text not as a mother, but as an archivist examining primary source documents. Each message was a piece of evidence, each accusation a confirmation. They were not trying to understand my position, they were trying to dismantle it. They were not seeking reconciliation, they were demanding surrender. As I read every voicemail, I took screenshot for every text message. I opened a new folder on my computer, labeled simply correspondence, and began to upload the files, dating and time-stamping each one. Lem's angry tirades, Chilo's manipulative sobs, the coordinated accusations of me selfishness and paranoia. They were no longer just a storm to be with, they were exhibits. Each one was another stone for me fortress, another item in the final ledger, another reason why the path I had chosen was the only one left to me. They thought their words were weapons to break me down. They had no idea they were giving me the very ammunition I needed to win. The storm of their fury lasted for 3 days and then abruptly stopped. The phone fell silent. The text ceased. It was a calculated, unnatural quiet, the airy calm in the eye of a hurricane. They were regrouping, I knew, conferring on their next move. I used the silence to prepare for mining. On Tuesday morning, the sky was a crisp, cloudless blue. I sat in Arthur's study with a cup of black coffee. The ledger opened on the desk not for a coating, but as a kind of touchstone. This was where it had all started, and this was where I would see it through. At precisely 9 o'clock, he picked up the phone and Isabella Ziala's direct line. She answered on the first ring. "Good morning, Judith," she said, her voice clear and ready. "Good morning, Isabella," he replied. "You may proceed." There was no need for further words. We had rehearsed this. The plan was in motion. I hung up the phone and sat back in the leather chair, my coffee growing cold. I did not need to be there to see it. I could picture it out with the dispassionate clarity of a historian viewing a drama. At 11:15, a man in a crisp uniform pulls his unmarked into the curving glass soaring glass tower downtown. He checks the address on his clipboard, adjusts his cap, and enters the lobby. The air inside is cold and smells faintly of ozone ambition. The receptionist, a young woman with headphones nestled in her ears, looks up with practiced boredom. He states his purpose at a very familiar mailer. It requires a signature. He presents the large, flat manila envelope. It bears not an address, only the name of a legal courier service. At the same moment, some 20 miles away, a different courier in an identical uniform navigates the curving, chill-light streets of a planet community, where every lawn is a perfect emerald carpet. She finds the house easily is the one with the meticulously curated beds of white hydrangeas. The one Joe features so often on her blog. A stone blackway by the yard reads advances. The courier rings the bell. The gentle chime is joined inside. The door is opened by my daughter, dressed in expensive athleisure wear, her hair in a messy but artful top knot. She has a phone pressed to her ear, and irritation flashed across her face at the interruption. "Yes, she must." One hand over the receiver. The courier holds out the identical manila envelope. For Vance, signature required. Back in the city, Liam has pulled a conference room where he is guest during a whiteboard covered in acronyms and arrows. He is annoyed, his brow furrowed. He types valuably. He strides to the reception desk, takes the offered electronic stylus, and scrawls a jagged, impatient signature. The receptionist hands him the envelope. It feels thin, insubstantial. He assumes it's a revised contract, a pitch deck from a rival, the mundane paperwork of his important life. He tucks it under his arm and heads back toward the meeting, his mind already on scenery and scale. In the suburbs, Chulo ends her call with a sigh. Just the painter. Honestly incompetent, she mutters, the town known in particular, as she signs a screen with a flourish. She takes the envelope and tosses it onto the Masai marble island in her Toscan-inspired kitchen, next to a bowl of perfect, unblemished lemons. It is an unwelcome intrusion of the mundane into her carefully crafted sanctuary. She plans to open it later after her yoga session. A picture lamp back in his office. It is a corner suite with a view that stretches for miles. He sits at a desk of steel and reclaimed wood. He has forgotten the envelope for a moment, but then his meeting ends. He sees it tears it open with an aggressive ring of his thumb. He pictures Chloe, her curiosity getting the better of her. She picks up the envelope, her manicured nails tapping against her paper. She finds a silver letter opener, as if from years ago, and slits it open with a clean, precise slice. They pull out the documents at the same time in the two separate worlds. The papers are heavy, official. The first thing they both see is the seal of the superior court at the top of the first page. Their breath catches. The casual annoyance evaporates, replaced as by a sudden, cold dread. They read the heading Judith Miller plaintiff, Veslam Miller and Cholo Vance defendants. The words are alien, impossible. Plaintiff, defendants. These are words for strangers, for enemies. They scan the page, their eyes snagging on legal phrases that are both incomprehensible and terrifying. Complying for declaratory relief, financial elder abuse, imposition of a constructive trust. And then, tucked behind the summons, is second document, is a formal notice from the law offices of Isabella Zias. It informs them, in calm, dispassionate language, of the existence and legal standing of the Judith Miller Irrevocable Trust, established by Arthur Miller years prior. It explains that all significant assets, including the family home, have been legally transferred into this trust. It clarifies with devastating precision that the trust is managed by an independent trustee. Corporate trust is termed as unalterable. The firewall, Arthur's final, prescient gift. For years it had been an invisible shield. Now, rendered in black and white, served by a stranger on a quiet Tuesday morning, it had become a visible, insurmountable wall. I sat in the study, the sun warming my face to the window. The phone on the table remained silent. The quiet in my house had returned, but it was a different kind of quiet now. It was the quiet of a deep dawn, of a record set straight, the quiet of fortress. Its gates finally, definitively closed. The phone has not rung in a week. The silence is no longer a weapon. It is a space I am inhabiting. It is the sound of my own life. Reclaimeth. This morning, I am in the garden. The sun is warm on my back, and the air is sweet with the scent of damp earth and blooming roses. My hands, protected by thick leather gloves, as steady as I hold Arthur old pruning shears. The steel is cool and heavy. I move from bush to bush, me focus narrow with to the task at hand, cutting away the dead wood. I look for the thin, withered branches, the ones that are brittle and gray, the ones that sap drank from the living cans. With a decisive snip, I remove them, letting them fall to the grass. It is not a violent act, it is a necessary one. You cannot have new roads, you cannot have vibrant, fragrant blooms, if you allow the dead parts to linger. My mind is as quiet as the garden. The maelstrom of the past few weeks has passed, leaving behind this vast, tranquil stillness. I know, with a certainty that requires no confirmation, that my children's lives are in turmoil. I can imagine the frantic calls to lawyers, the disbelief turning to right, the shocking way to the ugly calculus of what they stand to lose. I feel a pang, not of guilt, but of a deep, unchained maternal sorrow. It is a tragedy that this was the only path left, but I know this was not an act of revenge. Revenge is a hot, messy, and ultimately hollow pursuit. What I have done is colder, cleaner, and far more difficult. I have delivered the final lesson. All the years it gave them everything they asked for. I failed to give them the one thing truly needed, the bracing, clarifying lesson of a firm and unbreachable boundary. I got them that my love was an unconditional resource, and they reasonably concluded it was also an infinite honor. My final gift to them, delivered in a sterile legal envelope, is the truth that it is not. It is the concept of consequence, rendering in the only language they have left themselves able to understand. I pause in my work, resting my hand on the rough bark of the old clipping rosette that frames the back door. Arthur planted this the year lamb was born. It has survived blizzards and droughts, and still, every June, it produces a row of defiant crimson blossoms. Like this rose, a family is meant to have a strong root system. I see now that what I not watering the rosy was propping up the zinc branches, hoping they would somehow spring back to life. I think of the water on the walnut table. I haven't they had it repaired. It remains a pale, ghostly circle on the dark wood, a scar from the small wound that finally revealed the deeper infection. It no longer fills me with anger. It is a reminder. Like the faded photograph on the mantel, it is simply a part of the house's story now. A marker of a time when things changed forever. People might call what is it cruel. A mother suing her own children. It is an unnatural act. But it was also unnatural to watch them devour the future the father had so carefully built for me. For my old age, it was unnatural to be made to feel like a trespasser in my own home, a difficult and confused custodian of what they already considered theirs. The lawsuit is not the disease, it is the red girl. Painful surgery required to save the patient. In this case, the patient was me. A snip of final, with a red cane from a rose bush. The plant already looks healthier. Its green, vital branches reaching for the sun unburned, and I realize, standing here in the quiet sunlight, what the true inheritance had always been. It was never about the stocks, the house, or the numbers in a ledger. The real legacy Arthur left me, the one me children tried to take, was peace, a future free from worry, the quiet dignity of a life left on one's own terms. That was the inheritance, and I am the one who has finally claimed it. I have fought for it, and I have won. The future, with all its quiet, unscripted days, is my own. What an incredibly powerful and difficult journey to walk through. It's a profound reminder that true strength isn't just about silent endurance, but about the courage to draw a line, even when it breaks your heart. Ultimately, her story showed the most valuable inheritance we can fight for is our own peace of mind and self-respect. We hope this journey resonated with you here at Sylora's Stories. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Was there a single moment where a different differential, a peaceful family resolution, or was the final legal confrontation truly inevitable from the start? Thank you for being with us for this story. Take care, and we'll see you again soon. Next time, we'll explore what happens when a family's darkest secret is not in a ledger, but within the very walls of their home.